200 contributors to the Straits Times forum pages were invited to share their feedback on the newspaper at the annual Forum Writers Dialogue, chaired by Straits Times editor WarrenFernandez on Wednesday. During the 1.5-hour discussion, questions were raised on the checks and balances the Straits Times exercised to ensure its reports were balanced and fair. On top of their list of concerns was the amount of news coverage given to the recent online vice-ring case, which implicated 51 men, and the sex for contracts case involving former Central Narcotics Bureau Chief Ng Boon Ye.
The amount of publicity given to these folks, I think, was rather indecent. It sells the newspapers, no doubt, but I think the amount of space given to graphics, I think, is unjustified. But later on, I think it dwindled down. I think we should be more sensitive, because it affects a lot of families.
We had some feedback from various people about why so much coverage, why so many pictures over so many days. And we take those comments very seriously. So we debate them, we think about what we're doing, how much space to give to it. But we ask ourselves, when was the last time you had a case involving so many high-profile individuals of this sort? And it also comes into the backdrop of other cases related to it. So we can't pretend that this isn't happening in Singapore. It's unseemly, it's sordid. We all agree. But for us to not cover it and give the space that we did to it would also open us to the charge that we were trying to cover something up. So this is a case that's taking place in an open court. And part of our system is that open court proceedings are covered in the media. So people have a chance to know what's going on in the courtroom, what arguments are being made for and against. That's part of the legal system we have. And part of the legal system we have is that the media plays a role in surfacing it and giving it the light of day. So, okay, some people may say, but it's a bit unseemly, this is Singapore, we're squeaky clean, we're not used to this kind of thing happening. So we have to make judgments, and we take the feedback that we get from our readers. Sometimes we agree with it, sometimes we don't, and we make professional judgments. Do we recognize that there is an impact on the families and the individuals involved? Of course we do. But we also recognize that the public has an interest in knowing what's going on in those court proceedings, whether it's to do with the online vice ring or the vice and the corruption cases involving high-profile civil servants. Those are all matters of public interest as well. And it has been a very, very long time since we have had court proceedings with allegations of corruption for very senior civil servants. And can you imagine if my colleagues and I said, oh, it's so sordid, it's so unseemly, let's not cover it. I think people would say, why are you guys covering this up? And that would be very, very unfortunate. So, on balance, we can discuss, we can debate about exactly how much space, how many column inches, how many pictures. Those are all judgment calls. But in principle, I think we took a decision, and I would defend it, that this is a case with tremendous public significance, and we ought to give it the space that it deserves. And if we sometimes get a bit of pushback, that's fine. We don't assume that we're going to get it perfectly right day in and day out. Sometimes you may feel it's a little bit too much, sometimes maybe a little bit too little. But we just believe that this is a story that deserves the big coverage that we gave.
Mr. Fernandez explained that the coverage of the sex scandal cases was not meant to drive newspaper sales because the Straits Times functioned on a subscription basis and did not require sensational headlines to sell papers.
Just assure you that whatever we put in the paper regarding the cases you're referring to, it was not driven to sell newspapers. I can assure you of that, because the Straits Times is not like many newspapers elsewhere in the world which are heavily dependent on street sales. So, when you have to attract readers on the streets, you have to have the sexiest picture, the sexiest headline to grab their attention, so they part with that $1 or 80 cents every morning. the bulk of our readers are subscribers, and that's what we're trying to encourage, so that people have a habit of consuming the paper every day. And when you're a subscription-based model, then you don't have to have screaming headlines day in and day out in order to attract the audience. So whatever we choose to put on the front page or in the newspaper is driven largely by our sense that this is newsworthy and important. So I assure you that's not our motivating factor. I understand some people have sympathy towards the families, and we share it, And when you say have a heart for the people of Singapore, I assure you we do, because we come from the same community as you, Your families and our families are one and the same. So I say to my transport correspondent, you must write in a way that shows you understand what it's like being on an MRT train when it's crowded. You must understand what it's like being caught in a traffic jam and paying the ERP charges, and reflect that in our pages. Our health correspondent must write about healthcare and understand about the healthcare costs that all of us are having to grapple with. We are part of this community. We're not from some other planet. And if we don't understand and appreciate and share the concerns of the people in the community, then we can't be relevant, as Anthony pointed out. So I assure you that we draw our writers, our editors, very much from the community. So all of us went through the Singapore system. We grew up in this place. We share an interest in making it work. So it's not about just generating newspaper sales.
In the next clip, the dialogue participants discuss the coverage of politics in Singapore.